making it normal to talk about what's happening with technology in your home around your kids, what you're feeling
Yeah.
and how you're managing it, they will reflect that because they will believe in that as truth that's working because they see
That's
it.
good.
We all long to live a courageous life of significance. We all want to be the example to our children and do big things that change the world. However, at the end of the day, the bills are calling, and the busyness of life often keeps us from stepping boldly into our dream and passion. Join Angie Taylor, a 30-year veteran educator and co-founder of Valor Global Online and Valor Global Foundation, if you long to leave a legacy for your family and leave your mark on the world. This show is for you. This is The Way of Valor.
Hey, welcome to the Way of Valor. I am your host, Angie Taylor. And man, this podcast today has been brewing in me for months. I am so excited. I've asked Mindy Hardin, the Miss Mama Mindy Hardin, to join me today. Welcome, Mindy. I'll tell more about who you are in just a minute, but thanks for coming on the show with me today.
I always love the chance to pick your brain. There's not much I read these days that I don't think, I wonder what Angie would think about
You're
this.
so funny. You're so kind. Yeah, no, Mindy and I have a great time. Mindy, for those of you who don't know, Mindy wears so many hats for the Valor community. She's an entrepreneur extraordinaire in her own world, but then in the Valor community, she serves us as in the marketing. She runs our whole Valorpreneurs program. She runs in unique lanes in that you have really laid a foundation and path for us wrapped around technology use for kids. You've done a massive amount of research on that. And so that, for those of you joining, is what we are going to discuss today is Mindy and I just both have recently read the book Anxious Generation, and I will put the book in the show notes. It's definitely a worthy read of a book, but we wanted to unpack what is going on with the generation of kids in elementary, middle school, and high school, and particularly in regards to technology and the way they are using it. So that's what we're discussing today. We're hopeful that we will come out of this with here are some easy things for you to do as a parent today that will help support a healthier culture and atmosphere around technology in your home. And then I'm sure we'll have multiple podcasts going on this. So Mindy, let's talk first of all, first pass of the book, Anxious Generation by Jonathan Haidt, I think is how you say his last name. What's your initial take on it?
Love the title. It's brilliant, right? Because it's fear-based, which we're all into these days. So, of course, it had a great title, and it was fun to pick up and learn about Jonathan and his history and background and why he wrote it. And while he does cite a lot of fantastic scientific evidence that I think a lot of us as parents and anyone on the earth today would acknowledge it, I feel more anxious.
Yeah.
There's a lot happening. Yeah, this makes sense. There was also quite a few things that he said that for me just pointed back to the struggle of being human. So, I feel like every generation has had something to be anxious about, whether it was, the introduction of the newspaper that could spread or, whatever it is. And so you always have to find that balance between what's actually happening, what am I observing in my life, and what does the gospel say about this? So I admired a lot of unpacking that he did, especially when he used an analogy, really dug into some deep places that for me, I was also thankful I could turn to the truth of my experiences as a Christ follower, as a believer, and really look at it through the lens of how does this heal and cure this anxiety that we're always going to come back to, because we're always going to come back to it because, the sin of the world and life is brutal and tough. I've already had some anxiety today. I don't know about you, Ange.
Absolutely. Well, and I think it is important as we are talking about technology here, we very much talk about technology from the standpoint of it's a tool to be used and it's very much neutral. It can be used in very evil ways as well as very effective, positive ways in the world. And so when we talk about technology, that's the approach that we talk about it through the lens. But I'm going to share with you just a few of the statistics that he laid out in his book. And we're going to talk about this because I know as a parent myself, and Mindy, and I know you've run into this with your own kids, you know, having your kids finding pornography online or fighting addictions to social media or gaming. And these are all things that we all deal with. In fact, here's some of his statistics. He says adolescent mental health crisis rates of anxiety, depression, and self-harming of Generation Z, especially girls, have surged since 2010. His premise is 2010 was really when the smartphone came on. Suicide rates for U.S. teens ages 15 to 19, particularly girls, are their highest levels ever recorded. Global mental health decline is on the rise, and anxiety and depression is not limited in the U.S., but is a global phenomenon that we're dealing with. Impact of smartphones, the shifts from a play-based childhood to a phone-based one between 2000 and 2015 is marked as the beginning of a rapid mental health crisis. And I could literally go on. There are so many statistics and things to research in the book. The book, if we were going to put it in a nutshell, and it's a very good book, I actually recommend every parent read it because it gave me some things to shift, is very much about no kid should have a smartphone before the age of 16, you know, and definitely no tech for under middle school was if I was going to put the book in a synopsis. However, he does have a lot of great research. So what we were hopeful to do on this is take a little bit more of a middle of the road approach, because this is the world we are handing our kids. This is the world they live in. This is the way they are building community and friendships that doesn't look like our community and friendships. So Mindy, dive into this here. Like what would be some of the top recommendations? Because I don't want to just talk gloom and doom. And there are obviously very concerning statistics in this book that I immediately went, oh my gosh, that's so terrible. I would love for us to focus on, man, kids, cell phones, all the things. Talk to us about your tips on that.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I don't know about you, but once you get a 16-year-old, so you now let's just say that we apply Jonathan's ideologies here, right? So you've got a 16-year-old and now you're going to give them a smartphone. A lot of 16-year-olds look like full grown adults. They're driving. They have a lot more independence. They have a lot of stuff firing in their brains all at once and a lot of hormones happening. I personally chose the approach of giving my kids access earlier so that I could train them longer. My goal is actually by the time my kiddo hit about 17 or 18, especially those that I knew were probably on some path that was going to take them up, maybe into college, a trade school, and out of my house, I actually wanted them to have access to that full freedom with those devices while my husband and I were still nearby to watch their moods, to watch the way it affects their eating, their relationships, their sleep, and everything that they have access to in slow portions. So for us, we chose not a number, but we actually chose a maturity. Every child is different. These things show up, parents. I would encourage you to look for, are we on our own managing, keeping things clean around the house? Are we getting our homework done? Do we have self-control over our hands and our words? Because a child that's easily going to hit a button on a screen and, you know, shoot someone down or write a word or like something or share something, that same child has tendencies in your home that they're hitting, they're slamming doors, they're throwing things around. They just don't have the self-control yet to earn the ability to have that freedom online. So I would say one big tip is noticing when your kid has some self-control in your house. Hey, I communicated I'm home on time. I'm using kind words. I forgave quickly. I was honest. I ate more than one cookie than I was supposed to. I'm sorry, mom and dad. Or you asked me to clean my room and I just shoved it under my bed. I wanted to be honest. You have what I've always called a party for their potential because they are showing up with integrity and authenticity, and you are able to train them in those cycles. And those are the cycles that they need to take this tool of technology and to have dominion over
Mhm.
it, to master it, and to use it as a tool for good for their future, their education, their marriages, their relationships, their provision. So much is going to come through it. So for me, it was more about where's this kid's maturity level at? What are they ready for? What is showing up offline, right? That they would then be able to transfer online. And how am I praising the good things to get more of it?
I love that. That's so good. One of the things he does talk about in this book, and I thought actually that's really true, and I agree with him, was as parents, we've become overprotective of our kids out in the world, meaning most parents would not let their kid go down the street to a park by themselves as a child, or or however, a lot of parents are allowing their kids to go on the internet totally unprotected in a room by themselves. And I thought, man, that is really profound, because this is true. If we knew that there were pedophiles around a park, we would never send our kid to go to the park by themselves unprotected. Yet we know that the number one place now pedophiles are connecting with kids is online. So I would love you to speak to, okay, if that is true, how do we do a good job as parents of putting guardrails online for our kids?
Yeah, great question. For me, parental control is an oxymoron, right? Especially if you exist in a space of faith and belief of higher arching powers, right? Which we do, that ultimately have the final say. You are not going to be able to completely control everything that happens to your kiddo at the park or online. What you can do from the beginning, there's a couple of just very practical tools that I love. There are many phones out there. We use here at VGO at Valor in the community, we use the Bark phone, which is a locked down phone, which is a great phone that will give kids learning little by little. I loved to use my phone to teach my kids. They got their first social media accounts on my phone. I had the logins. We went through together. We created the algorithms. We watched how something drifted. Hey, mom, we liked a whole bunch of cat videos. And now all of a sudden I'm seeing something about bikinis on sale. Help me out here. Right. So we talked about how their attention was being used and how the algorithms were working. So there was some training that could happen there. In the beginning, you can start with restrictions when they're younger, certain amounts of time. And then you're not looking for the time though, Ange. You're looking for, how did I respond when this device went off? Did I completely dysregulate? Was I mean? When mom rang the dinner bell, was I in the middle of my video game? Did I get up and immediately start getting frustrated? Or did I say, hey, game's almost over, be right there? Mom responded with, great, 5 minutes. Did I turn it off right away? So it's more about, how am I able to manage the on and off switch of the technology? Because honestly, I don't think the technology would be quite as big of a problem if we couldn't just walk away from it when it was troublesome. Because the fact that we can just walk away and we don't have to deal with the hard thing is what's really causing the anxiety. That's the actual root of what's happening, is kids are seeing things and then they just turn it off. Nobody knew they saw it. So here comes the anxiety, right? Was that real? Could that really happen? Could that happen to me? Did that happen to my parents? What's going to happen next? And they don't have an outlet for it. So I think when you can create the space with just basic screen time, and then you move into a place of monitoring, which is really different than restrictions. It's kind of like when you take your kids bowling and you've got the guardrails up and they have a certain size ball and they can only go, and then you take the guardrails down and you start to just watch. Oh, you went in the gutter. Let's pick it up and start again. So monitoring is where you're watching what's going on. The honesty is happening. They're coming and they're talking to you about what they see. I always get so excited when one of my kids or even our students here at Valor will be like, hey, I saw something, right? We teach a screen talk class here, and the kids are learning about how to actually use technology well. And when they bring that forward, it's such an opportunity to ask questions. Well, is that real? What did you think about that? How did that make you feel? How does that compare to what you know about who God is and the truth you see in the world around you? So you take them through a series of critical discernment in what's happening online, which grows as they grow. And then they're much more able to set things aside and choose and like and use the tech for some really positive things. So I think it's a series of restriction. And then when they're ready, you can move into monitoring and conversation. And then you can just move into a place of trust where you're tossing them out and you're teaching them to use those little cues and that voice inside them to know right from wrong, and then allowing them to experience some of the consequences of that and scooping it back up into redemption. That's the cycle that I still need that.
Absolutely. Well, and I know even as we were raising our kids, there's things I would have done differently with my kids, but some of the practices we had were, hey, in our home, screen time was earned. Your homework was done, your grades were done, your chores were done, all of that. Then it's time to rest. And then we had firm boundaries on this is the amount of time that you get to spend in this place. I think it also speaks to, and I really love in chapter 8 in this book, he talks about the difference between the profane and the sacred, which is really profound given he himself was an atheist, which I thought was a really interesting thing because as an atheist, he acknowledges all people have a God-sized hole in them. It was a very interesting, I thought, gosh, he's spot on so many of the things he's saying in this. It was confusing to me. Not the point I'm trying to make here, but I'm still thinking about that chapter because it was such a profound chapter regarding we've lost our sense of awe because when you are on technology, everything's possible. We're so inundated with a massive amount of stuff. We have no moment to pause and enjoy communion with people or enjoy beauty in nature, give our brain free space to think. I would love for you to talk about that distinction because I personally have changed some of my habits because of this chapter in the book.
Yeah, it was a good one. For me, I think what he was pointing to was joy, because joy is a deep down sense of, in another book that I was reading alongside it, Following Jesus by Henry Nouwen, he talks about joy is the ultimate ability to exchange a struggle with something new, with something hopeful. He actually goes so far as to call it ecstasy and the ecstasy of the human mind, which is the separation from what's static. And that's joy. So there's static things that are always happening in our life. We go, we do, we're super busy. And when we step down and we look at what is sacred, what is holy, what is truth, which comes from ideas of trust and from betrothal, which are all relational, right? Truth is what we experience relationally repeatedly. That's how we know it's real. It's because, and it aligns with everything that Jesus taught us about love. So I think what Jonathan was trying to say in the anxious generation really aligned with what Henry was trying to say in Following Jesus, which is that when we prioritize the ability to turn something off, we miss the level of deeper joy that can exude from us when we've overcome the challenge, when we've sat in. Once you feel the love of Jesus, boredom kind of dissipates because you have a sense of enjoyment in his love. You have a sense of enjoyment in, wow, I don't have anything to do, but look what I have to see or be grateful for or think about or who I can see, right? So the ideas around like just boredom and pick the phone up and start scrolling, they kind of just disappear when you can be quiet in that space of the holiness of just a deep down joy and the idea of something new that can be created within you. And I think when we move that to the screen, that's where we get to talk in. And maybe we should visit again, even about the ideas of asking your kiddos, what are you doing on your screen?
Right.
You creating, are you building relationship? Are you standing up for truth? Are you spreading love and light? Or are you actually breaking someone down, and are you shutting someone off?
Yeah.
There's so many opportunities for them to be a part of community and see that they fit without having to mimic. I think sometimes where the kids get into a
It's
struggle
comparison.
is they find a
Yeah.
community and they're like, oh, I want to be just like that
Yeah.
person. That's not actually what community is. Community is Angie thinks different than me. I think different than you. We think different than our husbands, and we all bring something valuable to the table that's
It's cool.
purposeful. So that's a piece that comes through the screen and creates joy in us when we're able to tap into that
Yeah.
quiet stillness, right? That ecstasy that takes us out of the static and into the opportunity of something
And,
new.
just to really simplify it for a parent, our recommendation is whether you have a middle school or high school with a cell phone, the reality is very simple steps, like absolutely no phones at the dinner table. Like scientifically, it is proven that even having your phone sitting on the dinner table, even if you're not on it, creates a sense of at any moment it could be disrupted. And that's for parents as well as kids. So no phones at the dinner table. The second thing is when you go outside, one, your kids should be outside every day. And I know some states are harder than others to get that done, but every day they're spending time outside and they don't have a phone in their hand. They are simply taking in nature and goodness and having like, where's the time in their space where they aren't connected to technology? It doesn't have to be an all day thing, but intentionally adding space into your day where you do have those moments of pause and reflection. I was telling you before this call, I have started walking without my cell phone. I walk pretty much every day, and I have started leaving my cell phone home, and I usually listen to good podcasts or music or whatever. And it has shifted. Like I was walking yesterday and, when I walk, I'm always on mission. I'm always get my heart rate up, stay fit. And I just heard the Holy Spirit saying to me, Angie, can you just slow down and rest? Like just rest with me on this journey. And I think those are the moments, like I think God's calling to us all the time, but because our world is so noisy, even with good noise, we are
Yes.
missing the connection that we could have with God.
Yeah. It's countercultural that there would be actually freedom in a lack of control or a lack of certainty, right? Like there's this idea that if we have our phone, then we can call someone if we have a problem, or I can turn it off, I can turn it on, I can know all the details of what might be happening, I can plan. And what we actually know is that in the space, like that's what faith is, right? Faith and fear can't coexist, and you can't have that abundance of faith for the Father to step in and say, I got you. You might be on your walk and you might, hurt yourself or get hit by a car or lose this, and I will care for
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
through that.
Good.
And that peace of mind that comes when we remove that certainty that we feel, that false
Mm-hmm.
security,
Mm-hmm.
keeps learned so much. And the book talks a lot about how much they need to be given the freedom, right? We as the old folks in the room are like, I used to ride my bike and just have to be home by the time the stoplights went out or whatever,
Exactly.
It's like, but that's how they build those ideas within them of, I can do this. There is freedom in not knowing everything and where I'm going. And to your initial point, we role model that as adults. You don't want phones at the dinner table, turn yours off. You want your kid to run to the feet of Jesus when they need some help, when they're afraid, when they feel anxiety, they feel
Yeah.
depression or despair. You role model that. I'm feeling
Good.
anxious and
Good.
overwhelmed today. I got to go pray. I needed to put my phone away. So I think that's another big piece that I would recommend for parents in this technology space is recognize that how you are verbally, making it normal to talk about what's happening with technology in your home around your kids, what you're feeling and how you're managing it, they will reflect that because they will believe in that as truth that's working because they see
That's
it in
good. Well, and the final thing we're going to say, and Mindy will definitely carry this onto a future podcast for sure, because there's so much more to be said. I really wanted to, the last thing I wanted to talk about is sleep deprivation. The reality is one of the biggest causes is for anxiety and depression in anyone. It is linked to sleep deprivation. There's nothing like getting good quality night's sleep. So the most simple thing you can do as a parent and even for yourself is get your cell phone out of the bedroom and get off. I've been working on, this is a new thing for me, just reading before I go to bed versus being on my phone to try to improve the quality of my sleep. But the reality is that is such an easy step. And yes, you, if your child is fighting you on that, you probably all the more need to do it, because it says your kid's probably getting text messages at 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning and they don't want to miss it. And the truth is their cognitive ability goes significantly down, as well as their mood and their depression and anxiety all are contributors to sleep deprivation. Mindy, did you have final thoughts as we wrap up this episode?
Yeah, thank you. I think you covered some great things. And I think with any of this, being curious before you're critical. Good. You talk all the time about this with what's going on with the kid. Hey, what's going on your phone? Help me understand why it's hard for you to leave it out of the room, right? So as parents hear this and they feel that conviction and stirring to make some changes, be intentional. Don't wait until there's a problem, right? You got to land the plane and fix the broken wings before you take off again. So really make time to sit as a family and talk about, here's some things I'm noticing. Here's some changes I'd like to make. What are you noticing? And how are we going to keep each other accountable to doing this better? And then give yourself time, especially if you have habits in your home that are, counter to what you know is best for you and your kids. You can't fix them overnight. Yeah. So start by saying, how about at 9 o'clock, everybody gets an hour on their phone to check all their text messages, get all their stuff done, and then we'll all put it in here and see how we do, right? So set up baby steps to get to the bigger picture and make room for God to just abundantly bless your efforts through, to your point, the sacred and the space that you make for the uncertainty. And kids will get addicted to that joy and that peace and that rest and his love much more so than what's going on through their screen.
Well, I love that you ended on that note, because anything we're talking about should be a collaboration with you and your child, because you want to protect and guard the relationship. So if you've never had any filters on their social media or on their phones, and all of a sudden you're like 10xing all the security that you're putting on their phone and watching over them, that's not going to be well received for a middle schooler or high schooler. So to Mindy's point, it's a collaboration, baby steps, talking about, hey, how do you feel when this happens? Yes. Why are you concerned that we're putting security on your phone? Those are all such good questions. Mindy, thank you for joining me today. I know it was a last minute request, so I really appreciate your time. And hey guys, we will definitely do a podcast 2 on this one. If you have questions though, go ahead and shoot me DMs, emails. I'll make sure all my contact is in the link that you can reach out to me and ask your questions, because we will tackle those in our next podcast. We'll answer all your questions that you're dealing with around this topic. Blessings on your day. Thanks for listening.